This is Donnie Tuttle from Southwestern Consulting's Sell Anywhere podcast. If you can sell anywhere, we can help you sell everywhere. We're the podcast for professionals and teams who don't quite fit into the traditional brick-and-mortar office structure. Helping you live a life of freedom and productivity, we believe that you truly can sell from anywhere. All right, so Sell Anywhere audience, I've got an awesome man on the phone with me. You're going to be excited to hear from the author of The Perfect Close, a man who has been doing this sell from anywhere lifestyle for many moons. And actually, before I even introduce you to him, I've got to tell you there is an interview that I did with him before on the Sales Heroes podcast, and I happened to have done it from a pirate ship that was sunken in, so that particular interview is at the bottom of the sea somewhere. But I'm redeeming myself, and I'm bringing the value back. We have James Muir, Pure Muir, who right now is really known as a keynote speaker, best-selling author, and the guy who makes happy nurses and happy patients. James, welcome to the show, man.
Donnie, thanks for having me on the show. It's great to do round two. We'll have to keep this one preserved.
We will. Yeah, we're gonna seal this one and keep it. Now, here's the funny thing for those of you who have been following our adventure. I'm actually in Salt Lake City at the moment of us taping this. James, where are you at, man?
I am in a suburb of Salt Lake City called Harriman. So I live in the mountains just southwest of Salt Lake City proper.
Oh, okay. So then I live in Sandy. So you mentioned Sandy earlier. That's where we are at. And it's interesting. We've met online here. This is like, but we haven't shaken hands in person. We will absolutely do that here pretty soon. But James, introduce yourself, man. Tell us a little bit about you and just what makes you tick, other than what I've talked about what you do, but maybe not so much who you are. Who is this masked man, James Muir?
Well, today I got two roles today, right? I'm the president of Best Practice International. That's a consulting firm for organizations that have complex B2B sales, mostly healthcare clients is who my clients are in that space. And then I'm also an equity holder and a VP of sales for a company called Shift Wizard, which you mentioned. And what they do is enterprise-wide shift scheduling for hospitals and integrated delivery networks. So I'm doing both of those things right now. And like you mentioned, I'm The Perfect Close. It actually hit number one for the third time just last week. So it's still going strong out there. I'm surprised, but excited that long after the launch, it's still a very popular book and people are getting a lot out of it.
We're going to get into that too, because I think you, James, you've taken and demystified something that a lot of us have given complexity to, and that is the close. And so we're going to share some of that. So listeners, get ready for that one. James, I need to know, man, where are we talked about that you're in Salt Lake City now, but give me some of your selling scenario. You work from where? How often? When does that change? Give me your work environment scenario.
Sure. So, I'm working primarily with executive decision makers, and because of that, they can be located anywhere in the country. Like yesterday, I was in Dallas. So I travel a lot, at least 3 days a week, sometimes more than that. And that means I got to work on the road. So everything I need has to come with me. That means it's all got to fit into 1.5 carry-ons. And so, I would just say that I've been able to sell, anywhere, not so much by design, even though I do like traveling, but most are out of necessity because when you're meeting with those executive buyers, their time's at a premium. So we mostly cater to their schedules.
I love that. So we're talking about you're setting up wherever the executives are. And so, James, I'm sure you're not just traveling to Dallas and then you meet with the executive and then you travel back. I'm sure you're doing other things in between. Where do you normally post up? Are you in coffee shops? Are you in co-working spaces in your hotel? Like where do you go?
Could be any of those places. Sometimes it's in the car. Sometimes it's in a crown room or something like that at an airport. Yesterday, I was actually in a place called WeSpace, which I've never heard of before until yesterday. But it's basically a big office space. This entire floor of this building was just a ton of cubes that you can come in and you essentially rent them. But it's got everything that you want. It's got computer screens and Wi-Fi and conference call lines and conference rooms, and it's great setup, and it was very busy, so it looks like a pretty good model for them. But yeah, I could be anywhere. In fact, sometimes I'll do business with a client, and then I'll just ask them if they have space, and I'll sit down and do some work from there. Just depends on what the travel schedule is, really.
Ooh, I'm glad you said that one. I do that often. A lot of the way that I sell is through through in-person workshops, and then afterwards, rather than driving back and wasting those prime hours on driving or whatever the case is on travel, I'll set up right there. And then also that co-working space is a phenomenal thing as well. Tell me this, like why not a traditional office? How long have you been away from a traditional office, and has it just been a necessity thing for you, or is it something that you chose? Or peel into that one a little bit for me.
No, it's really more out of necessity, but it's totally ingrained in me now, because for the last 30 years I've had this schedule that's like this, and I tried to adjust it a little bit as I've taken on more executive level roles, which would let me be home with my family a little bit more. But years ago, many years ago, this is 20 some years ago, I was an application specialist, and so or a demo dolly, if you want to call me that. And so other people would book the appointments, and then I would go out and be with them, right? And so those salespeople would run you as hard as you wanted to be run. You could be out 7 days a week if you'd let them. So I just can't even remember a time when I wasn't traveling 3 days a week. So you don't do that for 30 years without learning a few tricks on how to make it smooth.
Man, no, that 30 years, you were at the forefront of this whole thing. And I feel like there's just this massive flood of people moving into that space now, mainly because of technology.
We went through all the security changes that happened at the airports, and I can tell you all these funny stories we used to do with each other, before they made all those rule changes. But I've seen it all from. In fact, there was no web meetings, right? Originally, there was no web meeting. In fact, there were no projectors. When we had an overhead projector called the Duquesne, and then we had a plate that we would plug a VGA in, and that would sit on top of the overhead projector, and that would project forward. And people thought we were whiz-bang cool when we brought that thing in. So that's how. We watched, and the gear that we would have to haul with us was so huge. We would never, you'd have to check 4 bags. Because of all the gear we were hauling around. So it's come a long way, right? You can get, like I said, I can get almost everything I need into 1.5 bags, unless I'm going for longer than a week.
All right, James, got to know, man, what's in your bag? You're getting on the plane tomorrow. What's in the bag?
Everything's already packed. So anybody who travels a lot probably is like this. I can pack, if somebody said, hey, we got to go, 10 minutes later, I could be all perfectly packed and ready to go, because everything is already there. So all your toiletry there, and they're all self-contained. So if you got to pull them out so they can go to the X-ray and all that, it's all done. But what's in my bag is I got a very small projector. Of course, I got a laptop. I also have a tablet. I also have my phone, and I use all those things. I even have a little docking station for my phone that turns it into a PC if I need to. All I need is a screen. And then I can HDMI to it, and boom, literally my phone becomes a laptop if I want to do that.
Oh, you have an HDMI cord from your phone?
Yeah. So there's iPhone people and there's Android people, and I'm an Android guy. I use the Note series, and it's something called a deck station. And if I plug it into that deck station, and then I'm at the hotel, boom, it's a PC. So it's phenomenal, and it just keeps getting better and better. So I do foresee a time when I won't have to take even the laptop with me, although they're so thin now, it takes up the least amount of space in my bag. So I do have a container. It looks like a toiletry bag, but it really is just completely full of adapters and wires and things like that. I also have some recording equipment. So it's like a Zoom recorder. Probably a lot of people don't know what that is, but so if I'm speaking somewhere, I just mic myself, turn it on, and it records to an SD card, and then later when we're done, we can upload the recording somewhere else. So, but all that goes, and then whatever happens, and whatever is needed, I'm capable of handling it. I can't even tell you the number of times somebody else has tried to connect to a projector in a conference room, and they don't have the connector that they need, and I just pull it out of my bag and give it to them so that we can keep going.
Dude, yeah, and in being prepared, because it's almost in our profession, technology is going to go wrong. And so it sounds like you have a backup to a backup to a backup. And how did you learn that lesson?
I am an over-preparer. I am fully guilty of that. It's school of hard knocks, right? Because there's just some kind of things that happen that will just kill your presentation. It's over, right? And so I don't want to. I have another friend. He's not as light as me, but he packs long cords and everything because he doesn't want to get in a situation where he can't be able to project, because that will end his presentation. But I would also say you can go low tech too, right? Like I have Sharpies, and I have flip chart markers, and I have dry erase markers, because how many times have you gone to the whiteboard and either the markers are dry or they're the wrong kind of marker, right? So I just carry those in my bag so that if it comes up, ask if I can use it. Say, oh, but we don't have any markers, no problem. Right, I got them.
Yeah.
So, I'm looking at the bag right here. We could very easily inventory the whole thing if you want.
James, I'm thinking I can remember there was a particular time, James, I wish I had you living inside my headspace. I was doing a presentation, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get it connected. They couldn't get it connected. Eventually, it got connected, but it was like 12 minutes late. And gosh, it was so hard to get out of my own head the things that I'd done wrong. Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yep. You get rattled, right? And,
yeah.
And usually when you're rattled, it takes longer to do stuff. And the truth is, you have less time than you had before. And by the way, I think that's a good argument for why you need to be super prepared for every presentation. Because if someone says, "Hey, I only have 10 minutes now," either they show up late, or I've had executives come in and say, "I only have 10 minutes." And honestly, I get uptight when that happens, but I'm going to make the most of the 10 minutes, right? And so you got to have your message tight. You got to know exactly what you want to say before you go in there, because if that all happens, you might end up with no screens, no PowerPoint, no nothing. You might just be saying everything. And by the way, my favorite kind of presentation today has nothing to do with PowerPoint. It's whiteboard. Whiteboard or flip chart is hands down the best. And the data shows that people retain what you present way better with a whiteboard or with a flip chart if you're drawing the whole thing. And that's because they can't tell what's going to happen next, right? And so it's much more interactive to them. And sometimes you can even hand the markers over to them and ask them to add some stuff to the picture too. It's really fantastic. But, and here's the caveat, well, you got to know your stuff cold, right? Because you're not going to be able to just look up at the slide and read the next bullet on the slide. Right? It's all got to actually be in the memory bank for you to be able to put it back out in a sort of a stickman diagram type of model when you're using a whiteboard or a flip chart.
Oh man, that is rich. I've never actually had anyone share like this before. Now there was a guy that oh gosh, he was the head of all of the Hilton brand hotels for a while, and he actually encouraged. He said, if you can't take your message and draw it, not write it, draw it on a napkin, you don't know your message. And what you just now told me was like, if you can't put it on a whiteboard, you don't know it. Don't be
100% agree.
Don't be a slideshow jockey. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, it's a crutch. It's a crutch. And I'm guilty of having used that crutch in the past. But I mean, if you want to be tight, then you need to distill your message down to where you can do it with a drawing. And you might have like 4 or 5 separate drawings, like this concept, and then you draw it out. But the cool thing is people actually remember that better. I mean, there's an outfit that is worth following. It's called, the name of the company is called Corporate Visions. And they have several books that you can purchase. But they're all absolutely excellent. But they've been right at the forefront of all of this research on why drawing and like even when you have to use a PowerPoint, you're actually better off using a font that looks like you were drawing than not. And that's actually why, if you look inside my book, all of the illustrations and everything in the book all look like they're hand drawn. And that's I'm trying to maximize the retention for the experience of the people either reading the book or if they're watching a presentation.
Love it, man. I want to get into the book. I'm really excited about just asking. And by the way, Tim Reisterer, that's the I just now realized.
That's your guy.
Yeah, I love Tim.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. Yeah, follow that guy.
Good stuff. Good people. You guys should all follow them. They really have the science behind the sale. So I love that. When do you remember anything that transitionally happened to you when you went from, or was it just so long ago, but from the time where you went from regular office scenario to, hey, James, you can do this from anywhere. As a matter of fact, you have to by necessity. was there any adjustment or any speed bumps for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, so if you're asking what's the biggest challenge with that type of lifestyle, I would say that hands down, the biggest challenge is still trying to value and maintain your relationships with other people, with your family and with your friends when you're traveling all the time. It makes it really hard. And man, I screwed up big time when when I got married. I spent my first year anniversary in the Houston airport coming back from a deal. And I remember talking to my very sad wife on the phone and realizing what a colossal screw up it was for me to have booked a sales meeting on my anniversary, which is this Tuesday, by the way. And
Happy
it just shows how out of whack, it just shows how out of whack my priorities were and how they can get when, when you get totally absorbed into work. And it's great, right? I mean, it's great that it's fun and exciting to be killing it at work, but at the same time, the challenge now is how do I maintain those relationships while we're on the road, right? I mean, money, recognition, even security, none of those things are more important than relationships are. And that was a hard lesson. And I'm downplaying it here, but I'm telling you, my relationships suffered for quite a while, and I got in some to a place where maybe it wasn't going to work out. And so I would just coach anybody on this call, don't start putting your work ahead of your own relationships with your family and all that. That can easily happen. It happened to me. And so these things have to be factored into your travel schedule, right? I will never make that mistake again, but I can't go back in time and take my 1 year anniversary and get it back. I can't.
Wow.
That's forever. My wife she'll never not remember the fact that I was in the wrong place on that 1 year anniversary. So, and I miss some of my kids growing up. Same thing, right? So I don't mean to turn preachy on y'all, but
no, this is good.
To decide. Yeah, you just have to decide what are your priorities, right? All those important dates and milestones, they're on my calendar now, and they're sacred. If the world's biggest deal comes down the road and they want to meet on that special day, the answer is no. And I have walked away from some big opportunities. It doesn't happen often, but if you decide in advance how you're going to roll, then it's an easy decision to make. But you have to decide, hey, what's really important to you? What's your priorities? And if you don't get that right, then you're going to end up in a lot of misery. I know, because I've lived it. And so, don't let work become your life. It's fun, it's thrilling, but we don't live to work, right? We work so that we can actually live. So there's a balance in there.
Yeah, James, this is perfect. And a lot of the people who are listening to this are probably living on that line right now. And I want to know, so I'm hearing a little bit of schedule, but strategically and practically, how did you swing the pendulum back the other way? What does James do? Is it scheduling and then you stick to the plan? Is there more to it? Like, how did you swing that back?
There's some tricks you can do. So the first thing is you got to take all the important dates and milestones and get them on your calendar, and they're sacred. So nothing moves those dates. And then you plan around that so that the people that you're with know that they're the most important thing, that work's not the most important thing. Okay. And you're messing up when people, when your own family comes into your office and knocks on your door and asks for permission to talk to you. You've screwed up somehow if they don't feel like you're approachable enough that they can even come into your office when you're working. And I got to that point. But there's other tricks you can do. Like if you're going to do a trade show and it's going to be at Disneyland, well then book 3 days or 4 days of Disneyland after the event and bring your family out for that part. Right. And so you've already kind of, in fact, even the company that you work for might have paid for your, outbound fare, maybe even your return fare. And so there's even a little bit of economy in it, but then it's fun for them too. Right. And I've done it where my family goes and does something fun during the day while I'm at the events, and then in the evenings we're doing stuff together. So if you just think a little bit ahead about, involving them, including them, then you won't find that you're sacrificing your own relationships for work or for business.
Gosh, man, you have no idea. Behind me is a poster, my vision board, and there's a huge phrase on it that says "Go live on purpose." And one of the things that we've recently decided is that I'm not traveling alone for any reason, and so when I go somewhere, at least one person from my family goes along, and we make a date of it. And I just don't want to lose those things that are most important. I love how you just now approach that, man.
Yeah, my dad actually was a sales guy, traveling sales guy, right? So he drove around the Intermountain area in a car. So he had these long roads, and so he would take me as a kid, and we had these really fantastic conversations while we were driving on the road to and from the different businesses that he would go and visit. And I remember that today. I mean, and I actually just had a chance to do it, like a 3-hour trip with him. I took him to an airplane museum for his birthday, and we remembered all those different drives that we had done. And so there's some genius in what you're saying right there, right? Because you're building relationships at the same time, and there's something to be said for if you're just taking one of them, then you get a lot more connected to that one person in the family, as opposed to it's not a bad dynamic to have a whole family, but it's a lot more personal and when you're taking just one, I think.
Yeah, and with a family, like, I don't know if you knew this, we have 8 children, so that alone time is some pretty good stuff. So let's turn the page, figuratively and literally. Take the perfect close. The secret to closing sales. One of the things I really feel like that all of us can do better is we can be better at closing. And most of us, James, we resist the close because we just don't want to feel pushy. And you really have a great approach that removes that takes away fear. And man, if you can share a little bit about that. I'm looking at one of your I don't know if not a tweet, but whatever it is on Instagram. So today, closing secret number 18 from James Muir is regardless of a client's answer, the perfect close questions leave you and your client emotionally on much higher ground. James, this is real servant selling type of stuff. Can you dig in a little bit and maybe share a little bit with the listeners who can improve in this area? All right, I want you to hold that thought because I have a real quick message for the listeners, and then we're going to jump right into it. Hey, I hope you're really being sparked and challenged by the podcast. Listen, one thing I know is that every top player out there needs a good coach behind them. At Southwestern Consulting, we actually coach thousands of leaders and entrepreneurs and sales professionals to get to the next level while living a lifestyle by design. If you're curious about having a coach on your team and about what that might look like, just go check out DonnieTuttle.com and click on the link that says request a free call. That's DonnieTuttle.com.
Oh yeah, let's just tell them the whole thing right now. So there's 2 basic questions. I guess maybe before we tell you what the questions are, anytime you go in any kind of interaction with a client or with a prospect, you should think ahead before you go in. Hey, what's the ideal outcome here? What do I want to happen here? Right? So, and I would call that the ideal outcome. And then you want to have a couple of fallbacks, because what you think is ideal and what the client might be ready for might be 2 different things. So you want to have sort of a best case, advance. And then you want to have a couple alternatives just in case the one that you think is ideal, it doesn't prove to be realistic for your client.
So far, this sounds like the bag that you pack on your trips. But go ahead, I'm loving this.
That is exactly right. Yeah, it's your contingency plan.
Yeah.
And knowing what those 3 things are, I recommend at least one ideal advance and a couple of backups. And so when you walk into the meeting, knowing what all the little small steps are that they could be taking, then you're going to use these perfect close questions to advance it. And it's going to by using an ingeniously phrased but very simple phrased question, you can take all the pressure out of it. It's non-confrontational. It's zero pressure. It feels facilitative. Customer feels like they're in control. There's no reason not to ask it. And statistically, by the way, most sales calls, 50 to 90% of them actually end with nobody asking for any kind of an advance or commitment at all. So asking at all is really a much bigger problem than asking in the wrong way. But the reason people aren't asking is because they've never learned a way that doesn't offend their sensibilities. All the ways that they've learned in all these books are pressure sort of tactics, and that's what they don't want to do. They don't want to be pushy, right? So what we're going to teach your listeners right now is how to do it without being pushy. So there's 2 questions. The first question is, does it make sense for us to X? Okay, and X is your ideal advance. Okay, so if I was going to do an assessment for Donnie, I'd say, hey, Donnie, does it make sense for us to do an assessment for you to see if it, see what kind of upside there is? And there's really only two things he can say. He can say yeah, or he can say no, right? And so if he says yes, great, we get our calendar out, we book it, right? If he says no, then what we're going to do is there's a couple different levels here. And the kindergarten level is we're just going to throw the ball back to him and say, well, okay, well, what do you think makes a good next step then? Right? That's the second question. It says, what's a good next step then? And so those two questions, does it make sense to whatever your advance is? And then if it turns out, that they say no, then we say, okay, well, what do you think is a good next step? Now there's a flip. If he says yes, then we can also do an add-on. The add-on would be, okay, other clients at this stage sometimes do Y. Does it make sense for us to do Y? And that way you can add on. And the whole point of all of this is that we just want to go at the pace the customer's ready for. That's the ideal pace to go. It's when we start moving faster than they're ready for, that's when it starts to feel pushy, right? So we're just throttling it to what they're ready for with these two basic questions. Now there's actually 5 different versions of this question. And you heard just a hint of one. Is when people buy things, sometimes what we're selling isn't something that people buy a lot. And so they don't know how to buy it. They've never been walked through the process
that's a good
of doing
point.
this. And so they're not very experienced at it. And I happen to be in that space. We tend to deal with enterprise-wide IT systems. And, it's very often the person has only purchased it once or maybe none times in their entire career. So they don't really know what a good next step is. So we can help them a little bit by seeding their thinking. We can say, other clients at this stage typically do this. Does it make sense for us to do that? And you see, all this time, we're not saying, will you do it? In fact, asking them, will you buy or will you take my step is very different than does it make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Because does it make sense is essentially at its core, it's just a timing question. It's not really, in fact, you could just turn it into a timing question. Is the timing right for us to X? Would be perfectly legit form of the question. It's really just a trial close, but it's a non-pushy one, right? Because we're just testing whether they're ready. And so by asking them that way, instead of will you do this or will you do that, all the different closes that do you want to do it on Thursday or Friday, or do you want blue or green, or do you want, there's all these different manipulative tactics that are out there. And those are the ones that offend people's sensibilities. If I'm just asking, does it make sense to do something, they can see where we're headed, but we're testing them to make sure that it's okay with them. And if they say yes, then you'll keep moving forward. And why you want those 3 things is if you do this, let's just say they don't pick your ideal advance. You say, okay, well, other clients at this stage sometimes do this other thing. Does it make sense for us to do that? And then so we fell back one. And we might fall back even 2 times. I wouldn't fall back more than a couple times, or you'll start to look self-serving. But when you do it this way, we're just basically trying to throttle it at a level that they're comfortable with. If after a couple times they still can't come up with something, then you just throw them the ball and say, well, what do you think is a good next step? And what I can tell you, I've been on hundreds and hundreds of ride-alongs with my own sales teams, and I can tell you, when you say what's a good next step, in 90% of the cases, the client is going to suggest a very logical next step for themselves. And they're always comfortable with their own next steps. So it moves the sale forward in a little way each time. And so you get momentum that way, but it doesn't ever come off being pushy. So, I mean, there's more around this, but that's essentially the 2 key questions is, does it make sense for us to X? And, and then the fallback is, okay, what do you think is a good next step? And then there's a couple other variations where we can add more on, or we can seed some thinking. There's some around, if you're getting pressure from your boss to close by the end of the quarter, how can I figure out if there's if we can actually close this without telegraphing any kind of concession? So there's some upgrades to all of this, but that's at its core. Those are the 2 basic questions.
So at its core, does it make sense for us to blank? And then, and if no response to your fallbacks, then the next question is, what's a good next step then? And you throw it in there. I love that, man.
Yeah, and
very elegant.
Donnie, all 5 models, and it's super simple, right? We're just trying to take all the complexity out of it. But your listeners can just go to my website and download the models. You don't even have to buy the book. Just download the models, and they'll see all the models right there.
All right, hit us with the website, James.
It's puremir.com/resources is where they would go to get those downloads. So, and the one I'm talking about is just basically a diagram that kind of shows you like a little flow chart. Oh, well, if you ask them this, then great, you get an advance. If you say no, then answer this. It's very simple. So, but if essentially that's the crux. If all you're looking for is the questions, then you don't even need the book. You can just go download the tool.
Phenomenal, man. This is so helpful, and I'm going to be going there. And listen, you're talking to someone who teaches his clients 20 different ways to close people, because usually we have one way, and we keep hitting people with that same blunt instrument. And man, I'm a huge believer in that nobody likes to feel sold. We all love to buy, but no one wants to feel sold. And you want to find a way to push someone and make them feel sold, and screw up this part of the sale. And
yeah, well, that's what you're saying is, and what the little meme that you saw is saying is that, it doesn't matter how they answer either of those questions. You're emotionally on much higher ground than what you would have been if you say, will you X? And they go, no, then you're like, oh, right? You're at a much lower point there. But if we're always just saying, hey, does it make sense? Or what do you think is the next step? They feel like they're in control. And so emotionally, we're always on this high plane where we're actually just facilitating, we're serving, right? And I won't go off on a rant, but that's what selling is.
It is
serving. That's what it is. That's what it is. And you're just trying to help them get something done for themselves. You're coaching them, right? So.
Oh man, I love it.
I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, we'll leave it there. But man, I like, so many things around that, and we're tiptoeing into a really deep and wonderful subject. Maybe we can come back and revisit that another time. What I'd love to hear from you, man, is like, because you live this lifestyle, and you have a sales force, you have people who are out there that also are, they're not in a typical environment. How like, is there anything that you can say helps people to stay sharp? And this can be like mindset and motivation, because sometimes it's hard to do anything when you can do everything, James. Methods, being able to just stay sharp and crush it, instead of putting on the fuzzy bunny slippers and watching Oprah.
Well, all right. So you want to focus on motivation or tactics for
you take me any of those directions, man. Killing it, and even though there's no one walking by your cubicle or your office to chat or see what you're doing.
All right. Well, I'll start with motivation, I think, if you want. I mean, we can go any of those places. In terms of motivation, I would just say the first is you need to know what you actually want. What do you actually want as a person? And I won't deny it. That's a hard question for people to answer. Like in a workshop, I'll say, okay, well, tell me what are you trying to get out of life? And they're like, hey man, I came here for some sales tips. I didn't come here for mega life questions. But it's kind of an important question to answer, because your clarity around that is going to make every other goal to get to that easier. So everybody has a different what, right? For me, I have a target income that I want to earn, so me and my family can live a lifestyle that we want, and so we have enough resources to be able to help other people. Honestly, that's what my what is, right? And then once you've done that, you kind of need to nail down the why. And the why is, well, why do you really want that? And I won't ruin it for your listeners, but I will tell you how to get there. Is that if let's just say your answer, what you want is a lot of money, great. Then you would ask yourself, well, why do I want that money? What would that let you do that you can't do today? And then once you've written that down, then whatever that answer is, say, well, why do you want that? Right? So I'll just give you a hypothetical. Maybe you say, I want a motorhome. I'm like, okay, well, why do you want a motorhome? What would that let you do that you can't do? Okay. And then whatever the answer to that is, you answer again. Why? And if you do this 3, 4, 5 times, right? Sometimes you'll have to go, I doubt you'll have to go farther than 5 times. It always ends in the exact same place. And that place is where you'll find out what your real motivation is. And I've done it lots of times, and I know where it's going to land, but I don't want to ruin it for your listeners. If you take the time to do that, you're going to tap into a very strong why, right? And that actually will be a lot more powerful than willpower. The truth is that willpower is finite. It's a resource that runs out of gas, right? You recharges at night, and you get up in the morning, and you have more willpower in the morning than you have in the afternoon. Yet if we're tapping into the things that we really want, then you can see how it is that your job and the tasks that you do during the day are a way for you to get what really motivates you. So the key is get clarity around what it is, And I think another thing around that is kind of what you and I were just touching on a second ago about selling being services. I think salespeople, and this motivates me, so I've seen it motivate others, but I'll just share it with everybody, and you decide if it's motivating for you or not. And that's to understand what the true nature of selling is. A lot of people think that selling is like persuasion or it's like manipulation, and that is just not what it is. Let me just tell you a story that illustrates this perfectly. A while back, there was a story about this baby named Kaiba&nbsp is the name of the kid. Okay, and he was born with this defective trachea that caused him to stop breathing almost every day after he reached 6 weeks old. Okay, almost every day. So his parents were doing CPR on him every day. Okay, it'd be in a restaurant or at a bus stop or wherever, they'd be doing CPR on this kid. The regular doctors did not expect this kid to live. And I just think about what that would be like as a parent. It's just, to me, it's just tragic, right? Thinking at any moment your child might just stop breathing and die. So eventually these guys made their way to a doctor named Dr. Glenn Green at University of Michigan. And this guy had developed this amazing 3D printed medical splint, right, that could be applied to Kaiba's trachea and save his life. But it wasn't FDA approved. So Dr. Green had to use this emergency provision at the FDA to get approval so he could try this 3D medically printed biodegradable medical splint to try to save the Kaiba. And it actually worked, right? So he got approval, the procedure was a success, and that biodegradable 3D medically printed splint saved his life, right? So it's this amazing story, right? And we think Dr. Green is awesome. I mean, we all marvel with gratitude and the efforts that saved this little kid's life, right? And we can sense and connect with the goodness of it. And when we see stuff like that, we say, hey, yeah, that's part of humanity. I love that, right? If I could save somebody that way, I would absolutely do it. Well, here's the thing. I shared that amazing story with, but did you know there was a sale involved in that?
Someone had to sell it to them, didn't they?
Absolutely. The CT and the MRI scans that were required for the printing of the trachea implant cost money, right? The lasers and the 3D printers and the biodegradable materials that they print with, those all cost money too. And the guy that's actually responsible for selling all that and making it possible after they got FDA approval is named Scott Hollister. But we don't hear too much about the selling parts of those stories. And believe me, there's thousands of stories just like this one I'm telling you right here. And so the big question is, well, why is it that we see this type of sale differently than other type of sales, right? We all love this kind of sale. We're like, yes, that for Scott Hollister to sell this, he was absolutely serving that family and absolutely serving that child. So why is it that we see that kind of sale differently? And the reason is because we can easily connect the effects of these solutions with the people's lives, right? That's why we can make that connection. Without sales to fund the efforts, that splint would have never been made, and that baby would have died. Okay, and these dramatic examples help us see what selling really is, and that's service. Selling is an act of service, and while not every solution aims to address those same lofty goals, some solutions feed people, and some ease people's pain with medicines, and some help people communicate or travel, and some offer solutions that just help individuals focus on higher value activities, right? They don't have to focus on the mundane activities, so they can focus on more important stuff like family. But each of those solutions, regardless of what it is we sell, helps someone either achieve a goal, fulfill a dream, or avert a crisis of some kind, right? And each solution, regardless of how big or how small it is, helps a person move from where they're at to where they want to be. And so helping a customer move towards their goal is an act of service. And so it shouldn't be difficult or stressful at all. It should be easy, right? Easy in the same way that we would say, hey, I would save a life like that if I could do that, right? And that's just because selling is serving. So I probably spent too much time on that, but that's ingrained in my blood. That I just want to serve, right? That motivates me day in and day out. So, hopefully somebody on this who's listening on this can get the same kind of juice that I get out of that.
Brother, that was so good, James. That's what gets me going, man. And that I believe salespeople are heroes, but we do it when our secret power is when we're not self-motivated, but we're motivated by what we can do for others. And,
amen, brother. And the money will take care of itself.
It will. It will.
Right? If you just focus 100% on the customer, everything will work out. You will get paid. Don't go into it thinking about what's in it for you. You'll be taken care of.
And you led me in a direction. If anyone out there has not read Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand, And I'm sure you have, James, because what you're talking about is we are really, the other person is really the hero, not you. And you're delivering them to a place to where they're achieving their dreams or averting crisis. I forget the other one that you mentioned there, but it's we're helping them conquer their mountains, slay their dragons. We are not the hero in the process. I love that, dude. That is some powerful stuff right there. So
yeah, I think the way to
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, you.
I think the way to think about it is that a coach, right? Be a coach. And I think the most important thing, regardless of whether you're selling a new client or whether you're a manager or an individual, you're coaching an individual contributor, the key is that mindset, right? I mean, regardless of our goals, we'd all love to have a coach who's trying to help us get there at our own pace, right? And so the clients are engaging us because they're trying to make some kind of positive change. Sales reps are trying to do the same thing. They're both expecting us to be the coach, right? And if they could do it on their own, they wouldn't be even talking to us, right? But both the sales reps and both the customers, they want some help to guide them through each little commitment it takes to make their goals. So it's really a lot more than selling or managing. It's in both cases, it's really more about leadership. And if we just approach all our interactions as a coach, rather than being a manager, rather being a salesperson, then the whole dynamic of your interactions with others just changes dramatically. It engenders trust and loyalty, and it'll make that alone actually will make a massive difference in your interactions with clients because they'll sense that you're just trying to help.
Well, and you just removed the adversarial role that so many people feel. And I've noticed some new salespeople and even old salespeople, they have this thing that's rejecting that because they feel like, oh gosh, I've got to go do this thing. I've got to sell to this person, forgetting that selling is something you do for someone and with someone, not to someone. And man, I love where you took that one, man.
Yeah. So in fact, just to amplify what you just said, so I ended up training a organization where they had taken all their account executives that were formerly doing support only. They did not carry quota, and they converted them all, and they all started carrying quota. And I got in there to do this workshop, and at the very beginning, I started doing we do a little workout session, right, where we figure out what their challenges are. And I realized, holy smokes, these guys, they were saying things like, I've gone to the dark side. How can I go to my customer now that I have my hand out and I want their money? And I'm like, wow, you guys are seeing sales in such the wrong way. It is not like that. But we had to hijack the whole workshop for at least a couple of hours while we get to get their head turned around.
Mindset,
right? They wouldn't
yeah.
be able to, yeah. Just get their head going in the right direction so they could receive the rest of the training. But they walked out going, yes, that made a big difference, right? It's just understanding that selling is serving.
Man, this has been really good. I love just the practical tips, everything from being prepared, to both in your bag as well as your presentation and your closing questions, to really just driving it home on really what and how we should see sales internally and be motivated by that. James, how we are rounding third. We're running into home, and you're about to slide, and you're going to be safe for the game-winning run here. I want to know, how can we get in touch with you, and what's next for James Muir and the adventures of his awesome life and family?
Sure. Well, I got a couple projects cooking that maybe your listeners would be interested in. I'm almost done with a field guide for the perfect close so that organizations can run their own perfect close workshops without needing to have me there. Right. So you just go buy the book. Everything you need to run your own perfect close workshop will be all in the book. Right. So that should be done here in just a few weeks, actually. And then we'll see how long the printing takes. And then I'm in the middle of a book on tactical prospecting that I'm super excited about. And so I'm hoping to have that all completed by the end of the year. And I was able to deliver some of that material at the Outbound conference in Atlanta earlier in April with Jeb Blunt and Anthony Anarino and Mike Weinberg and those guys, Mark Hunter. But in terms of contacting me, well, you know my name. It's James Muir. I'm the author of the best-selling book, The Perfect Close. Really, the best way to get a hold of me is just to go to the website, which is puremuir.com, PUREMUIR.com. And you can download the first 3 chapters of the book. There's a special report about the 7 deadly myths of closing. There's a bunch of sales planning forms, agenda templates. Like I mentioned, you can just download all the perfect close models right there and see if it's for you before you even get the book. And if you are, great. Actually, right now, Amazon's got my book on sale. It's $1.50 if you get it on Kindle. So it'd be like a no-brainer to get it if you haven't gotten it already. But and certainly they're welcome to follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter or even Facebook if you don't mind seeing my personal stuff. But I'm happy to help them out wherever they can.
Love it. James Muir, you rock the house. You helped us to level up and to be able to go out there and sell anywhere. And guys, if we can sell anywhere, we can sell everywhere. For now, we're going to call it a wrap. Go out there and crush it. We'll talk to you soon. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today on the Sell Anywhere podcast. I really hope that we've equipped you and motivated you to be able to sell no matter where you are. Remember, your talent is not limited to your zip code. And if you can sell anywhere, you can sell everywhere. Hey, if you've enjoyed this, share it with a friend. Rate us on iTunes. We certainly would love a good 5-star rating. And if you know anyone that you think should get involved, or if you would like some more content like this, just go to Donnie Tuttle, swc.com. That's Donnie Tuttle, swc.com. And we will catch you next time.